Muscle hypertrophy and strength is by far the most debated subject when it comes to resistance training. People never agree on the same mechanisms, the amount of reps, of sets, so on and so forth. They still make mistakes and they end up damaging themselves for good because they followed this study or this bodybuilder. In this video, I will teach you everything you need to know about muscle hypertrophy and strength so that you can make your own workout plan and hopefully never permanently damage your body. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Superhuman Protocol Season 2. For those who don't know, the next videos will be dedicated to teaching you everything you need to know about making your own workout plan. The previous season of Superhuman Protocol talked about every vital system in the body, how to preserve it and enhance it. So the first season is also good for you. So, what is muscle hypertrophy? Wikipedia states that muscle hypertrophy or muscle building involves a hypertrophy or increase in size of skeletal muscle through a growth in size of its component cells. Myofibrillar and sarcoplasmic hypertrophy are the two factors that contribute to muscle growth and strength. Sarcoplasmic hypertrophy focuses more on increasing muscle glycogen storage, and myofibrillar hypertrophy focuses more on increasing the size of myofibrils. We can trigger muscle growth, so hypertrophy, with a bunch of exercises and techniques that we will explain later. These exercises increase muscle cells volume, leading to strength gain and muscle growth. Strength training is arguably the best way to increase muscle hypertrophy. Muscle growth can be stimulated with progressive overload and mechanisms like mechanical tension, along with other mechanisms like range of motion and time under tension. Mechanical tension is known for activating pathways that can generate anabolic results, like the mTOR pathway. I will not enter into details here about molecules, hormones and certain pathways because a video will be dedicated to this. A small damage, a microtrauma, is needed in the muscle fibers to start a chain reaction leading to muscle hypertrophy and strength. Lifting weights, for example, will create micro tears in your muscle fibers. Your body will try to overcompensate for this lack of strength by creating new muscle. Your muscle then will be able to lift the same weight for more reps. This is why processes like progressive overload are vital when it comes to muscle growth and strength. I talk about this microtrauma, but studies state that this correlation isn't as big as they want it to be. Meaning there are some processes that are way more reliable when it comes to muscle growth. Like for example, protein synthesis. There is a limit to how large a myofibril can get, and so when it snaps due to stress, the half doesn't disappear but grows. Protein synthesis will help with the growth of this muscle cell and will act instantaneously if there isn't a lot of muscle damage. We will talk about muscle damage later in the video. Protein synthesis occurs via a lot of processes. I will not bore you with the details, but some studies state that having more than 1.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight is not necessary to muscle growth. That being said, some studies say that a minimum of 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight, so 1 gram per pound, is needed for those involved in high level of physical activity. They further stated that this helps with lean body mass and it helps those who want a body composition adapted to highly demanding sports or physical activities, like high-level bodybuilding. It is common nowadays to see 2 or even 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, roughly 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, and many people stand by these numbers. Before muscle hypertrophy occurs, myonuclei are added to the muscle. Myonuclei are responsible for regulating muscle size, gene transcription, and cellular repair in the skeletal muscle fibers. A study tested myonuclei number and muscle size after 14 days overload followed by 14 days of denervation. The muscle lost much of its size but did not lose its extra myonuclei. Then they examined the muscles after 14 days overload followed by 3 months of denervation. Results: muscle fibers shrank a lot. Cross-sectional area of the muscle fell to only 23% of hypertrophied values, but the myonuclear number remained unchanged. Also, previously trained muscles retained way more nuclei than untrained muscles. So once myonuclei are gained, they are retained for a long period of time. What's more crazy is that apoptosis, which is the programmed death of a cell, skyrocketed from 1.3 to 11.8 per section in satellite cells, stromal cells, and connective tissue cells. Among the 15,000 myonuclei cells, only 1 presented some signs of apoptosis. So apoptosis does occur, but not inside the muscle fibers themselves. The study proposed a model for all those processes. During training, satellite cells fuse with fibers, new myonuclei are incorporated and so muscle enlarges afterward. During detraining, muscle shrinks and extra myonuclei remain. During retraining, protein synthesis can increase immediately because the myonuclei never left, so no need to recruit many new nuclei again. Hypertrophy should therefore occur way more rapidly. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the process known as muscle memory. The benefits are long-lasting and can even be beneficial to older people. Indeed, the study speculated that as older people are less capable of adding new myonuclei due to their impaired satellite cell activation, they can benefit from resistance training while young. People on PEDs and steroids boost this myonuclear process, giving them a lot of myonuclei, but I will talk about this in the next video. Now, let's get into the fun stuff. Myofibrillar and sarcoplasmic hypertrophy both give volume to a muscle, but the muscles reacted way better to myofibrillar hypertrophy, simply because it gave more strength and mass. Okay, but how can we hit myofibrillar and sarcoplasmic hypertrophy? Well, the old knowledge was heavy loads gave strength, moderate loads gave hypertrophy, and light loads gave endurance. It's not false, but it's not true either. Heavy loads stimulate actin and myosin synthesis, stimulate more sarcomeres, and increase contractile protein. All of this means more diameter, force production, and strength through pathways like mTOR. These will be the best for myofibrillar hypertrophy, aka muscle mass with strength. Lighter loads will prioritize sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, aka just visual mass. This type of hypertrophy is needed for glycogen storage, intracellular fluid, sarcoplasmic volume, mitochondrial content, and non-contractile material. Since bigger equals stronger and stronger equals bigger, we need the two types of hypertrophies. What's good to know is that heavy loads preserve sarcoplasmic level, so heavier loads hold the lead. So how heavy is too heavy and how light is too light? A study tested muscle hypertrophy with two groups: low load 25 to 35 reps and high load 8 to 12 reps. Both trained to failure, sadly no definition of failure given, so no accuracy there. They performed 3 sets per exercise, 7 exercises to cover all major muscle groups, and 3 times a week, non-consecutive days for 8 weeks. They found that both groups saw results, and those results were a reflection of the muscle fiber types. So low loads favored slow twitch muscles and high loads favored fast twitch muscles. There are of course muscles who have both. So for those who don't know, slow twitch muscles are type 1 muscles, fatigue resistance. Medium twitch are type 2A muscles, a bit less fatigue resistant and more force focused. And the fast twitch muscles are not very resistant to fatigue, but are more focused on strength. Let's take this example. Triceps and pecs see greater results with heavier weights, whereas biceps and quads can also see results with lighter loads. So it depends a lot on the muscle fiber types. I haven't seen a study that talks directly about this. I have only seen studies that talked about this indirectly. So this is just a theory from me. I still have a lot of research to do on this matter. So for hypertrophy, no weight is perfect when it comes to building muscle. If you go to failure, it's good. The 8 to 12 reps are not biologically unique. Muscles respond to high effort, not simple moderate or heavy loads. Even 13% of your 1 rep max can give hypertrophy similar to an 80% 1 rep max. Lower than 13% is clearly useless, so under 30%, hypertrophy drops. The downside is that lighter loads require many more repetitions, sessions take longer, they produce much greater discomfort, and higher metabolic stress and overtraining risk is high, if you go too hard. On the other side, heavier loads require additional sets to equal moderate load volume, brings greater joint stress and increases overtraining risk when combined with high volume. For those who don't know, volume is the number of reps times the number of sets. So moderate loads efficiently stimulate hypertrophy, they require fewer reps than lighter loads and fewer sets than higher loads. They reduce discomfort, reduce joint stress and saves training time. The study recommends a mix of both in the same training, but no current evidence is certain on this matter. No firm recommendation can be made. For pure strength, only train with heavy loads, obviously. Training only heavier loads will maximize your 1 rep max strength due to the specificity of the training, practicing lifting heavy weights, and due to neural adaptations specific to maximal lifting. Uncertainty remains as to how much heavy training is required to see some strength results, whether occasional lifting is enough, and how often athletes need exposure to heavy weights. That being said, rep ranges should challenge you every time. If you go to the gym and start doing biceps curls with an empty bottle to failure, bro, why? Just why? You won't see any result. We saw that we need heavier weights too. Well, actually, they are the most important one. I found that having a rep range between 6 and 10 reps was the best for functional hypertrophy. More than 10 reps only give visual hypertrophy. But if your goal is to become a bodybuilder, then it's the best one for you. This is why bodybuilders have a lower output of strength relative to their muscle mass. Just lift heavy at least half of the time to preserve your sarcoplasmic level and boost anabolic processes, and you'll be set. And of course, between 1 and 5 reps, you'll maximize strength. I hope it was this simple. But as I said a bit earlier, if you take into account my theory of certain fiber types reacted better to lighter loads or heavier loads, well, it becomes way more complicated when you need to create your own workout plan. It becomes complicated because then, to avoid imbalances, you need to figure out a combination of reps and sets for certain muscles. Well, it's not that hard in theory, but practically some body parts will have way less strength than others, and some will have way more muscle mass, way more visual mass than others. I'll come to you guys with the answer in another video, but for now, just remember, 1 to 5 reps are for strength. 6 to 10 reps are the continuum of hypertrophy and strength, and more than 10 is visual mass. For me, it's useless because I don't want to be a pro bodybuilder, so we'll call it visual mass. Don't sweat it with 80% of your 1 rep max, 50% or 90%, just choose a rep range and stay in it. Now, there are some key mechanisms through which we can gain more muscle, and these are mechanical tension, muscle damage, and metabolic stress. These are not exclusive, but they are among the most important ones. Okay, let's start with mechanical tension. Mechanical tension is the primary and essential driver of muscle growth, generated when muscle fibers contract against an external resistance or load. Mechanical tension is a mix of time under tension and range of motion. A lot of studies were done on this, and they all tested different tempos for different exercises. Some studies stated that lower tempos might be better, while others stated that as long as the eccentric movement was slow, your rep was valid. Well, you can have a time under tension of 3 seconds, but if you do half reps, you wasted reps. Well, not entirely false, because there have been some studies who supported the fact that half reps done in the most stretched position of your muscle yielded incredible results, like for example the calves muscles. Still, to avoid injuries and increase hypertrophy results overall, a full range of motion is recommended. Now, time under tension. I won't make this video longer than it already is, so I'll cut to the results. Don't overcomplicate time under tension by giving your concentric and eccentric movements different speeds. If you have a time under tension of 2 to 8 seconds, your rep is valid. So the whole rep should take between 2 to 8 seconds for the concentric and the eccentric. These can lead to optimal micro damage in the muscle fibers and trigger protein synthesis. But let's not overdo damage though. People thought that muscle damage was a factor promoting muscle growth. Well, it is true, but to some extent. There needs to be some minor muscle fiber damage in order for the body to overcompensate and create new material that will help with adaptation. But too much damage can actually impair recovery and slow progression. Remember that true muscle fiber hypertrophy takes weeks, generally more than 6, before you see some visible results. Since muscle damage signals myofiber protein synthesis, there usually is a spike of this protein synthesis at the start of the workout and just a bit after. This spike is devoted to repairing damaged muscle rather than building new contractile tissue. So if you damage your muscle by overtraining, for example, yes, there will be a big protein synthesis spike, but not to create new muscle, but to repair damage. Over time, resistance training makes muscles progressively resistant to damage, but still overtraining is possible. Yes, a large amount of myofibril protein synthesis does correlate with muscle growth if the damage has been repaired and new damage isn't added. I have to say that this study was done on young, untrained men, so a large panel of subjects is required to speak more accurately on this subject. Also, the study was done only on the vastus lateralis, a quadriceps muscle, so more muscles need to be tested to find a real pattern. Also, don't forget that beginner lifters see results like any other lifter. They are a special branch of resistance training because they can adapt, they can grow with anything at the beginning, and this anything means irreversible damage to some trained people. And now metabolic stress. Metabolic stress is an accumulation of metabolites like lactate, hydrogen ions and inorganic phosphate that contribute to muscle hypertrophy, mitochondrial biogenesis, angiogenesis and improvements in aerobic capacities. Metabolic stress depends on training variables like intensity, volume, number of reps, rest intervals and the type of exercise performed. Higher metabolic stress increases an acute secretion of anabolic hormones like growth hormone, testosterone, especially during high-intensity interval training, and cortisol, the stress hormone bad for us. Moderate loads, high reps, short rest periods and high lactate accumulation tend to boost metabolic stress. Metabolic stress creates a local hypoxia inside the muscle, contributing to hypertrophy. Hypoxia is a compression of blood vessels when muscles contract. It signals the activation of HIF1 alpha, increases glycolytic enzyme expression, promotes angiogenesis and enhances anabolic signaling. Metabolic stress also comes with reactive oxygen species. Simply put, they affect cell signaling. In moderate quantities, they activate mTOR, simulate IGF-1, signaling, activate MAPK pathways, and promote muscle protein synthesis. The review explained that hypertrophy-oriented training caused greater cell swelling than maximal strength training, because the hypertrophy-oriented training created more metabolite accumulation. Cell swelling stretches the cell membrane, increases pressure against the cytoskeleton, and is generally interpreted as a threat to cell integrity. The result is an activation of anabolic signaling, increased protein synthesis, and reduced protein breakdown. Going to failure here is extremely important because it leads to metabolic stress, but as they stated in the study, they need more research on this. Another mechanism that increases metabolic stress is low-load exercises without pause between the reps. They increase hypoxia, thus increasing anabolic pathways. In the study, they also talked about blood flow restriction training, but I'm highly against that. It increases metabolic stress like crazy, but I'm against it because it disrupts normal blood flow. It should be performed with very light loads for high reps. Studies stated that it can show similar effects as normal moderate to heavyweight training. Okay, then why disrupt your blood flow when you can have the same results with a normal training like hypertrophy training? It is generally recommended to people who cannot lift heavy anymore due to some problems. But I don't know, I personally won't risk disrupting my blood flow when I can do everything I want to do normally. But if you want to do blood flow restriction training, please consult a doctor. Another highly metabolically stressful exercise modality is high-intensity interval training, or HIIT. It will maximize metabolic stress by having low rest, high-intensity, oxygen-depleting exercises. It can generate greater acidosis, higher growth hormone, and testosterone responses. 6 weeks of HIIT increased oxidative enzymes, increased PGC1 alpha, improved fat oxidation, and improved mitochondrial function, with far less total training time than additional endurance training. That being said, there are some issues with this paper. Metabolic stress is hard to isolate from mechanical tension, so most of the evidence is indirect. Exercise protocols differ from study to study, training status may alter responses, some mechanisms remain hypotheses rather than definitive proof, and excessively reducing rest periods may decrease total volume, which could negatively impact hypertrophy despite increasing metabolic stress. We talked about training volume, frequency, intensity, mechanical tension, muscle damage, and metabolic stress. Now we only need to talk about progressive overload. Progressive overload is the principle of increasing training variables to see continuous results. You either increase the number of reps, the number of sets, the weight, or you reduce your recovery time, something I don't recommend. Progressive overload should be something you see every week or every 2 weeks. If you don't see progress in 1 or 2 weeks, it means that your body hasn't yet recovered from the previous workouts. So progressive overload is a direct consequence of recovery. I will talk about recovery in the next video, but now you know that if you don't see progress, it means that you are overtraining. Let me tell you a story. 1.5 years ago, I was still doing like 6 reps per training day for certain muscles, like for example my chest. And I was frustrated because I didn't see any results for example, a month. It's crazy. Then I started doing more research into training and I found Mike Menser and his high-intensity training. And I was like, but hey, he says the complete opposite of what the studies told me to do, so why should I follow him? But I was so frustrated that I didn't see any progress that I said, yeah, okay, let's go. I'll try Mike Menser's program. And progress I saw for the first time. Now for me, progress is once a week, but before it was once every 2 weeks, so it was still something new to me to see progress. And then I started spiraling down into this super high intensity, low volume, low frequency training, and I never went back to the high volume, high intensity, high frequency training. And the Mike Menser's way, I still recommend it in my physique videos. So the only thing that you should be focusing on is going harder than last time. You don't need 12 sets per week, you only need 2 to 4 incredibly hard sets pushed to absolute failure. Like I told you, muscle fiber macro damage is required for signaling good protein synthesis. If you damage your muscle, protein synthesis will first repair the damage, then act as a growth factor, delaying muscle growth. For me, progressive overload should be twofold. First you increase reps, then weights. No need to change the sets. This should not be something you change every week. Let's say you have one set of pull-ups for 9 to 10 reps. Last time you did 10 reps with 25 pounds. So now you will use the same 25 pounds because you didn't exceed the 10 reps. Once you exceed the 10 reps, let's say you do 10 reps and a quarter, only then, the next workout you can go heavier to be between 9 and 10 reps. Let's say you did 9 reps with 30 pounds. So you keep going with the 30 pounds until you exceed the 10 reps threshold. This is how I do it, and this is how many people do it. If you want a specific goal and you don't properly progressive overload, you will not achieve your set goal. This is why rep ranges of 8 to 12 are bad, because it is way too broad. So pick something close like 4 to 5, 7 to 8, or even 8 to 10. Sadly, not everyone benefits from the same workout. Factors like DNA, testosterone amount, lifestyle, and glycogen storage vary from person to person. Let's take for example the testosterone amount. Women have a lot less testosterone than men, leading to us men having much more muscle mass, something around 60% more. From men to men, testosterone can change too due to our DNA. DNA can also make some limbs longer than others, making it harder to train some muscles. But the genetics don't just stop there. Indeed, your lean body mass and muscle fiber proportion are defined before birth. And no, you cannot change your DNA. Good luck with that. Differences between sexes also exist. One example is endurance. Women tend to be more resistant to fatigue than men, but more studies are needed to further explain why. Testosterone amount, diet and glycogen storage are factors that can be modified, naturally or not. In the next video I will talk about anabolic steroids and PEDs, so stay tuned. Glycogen storage is extremely important. Since resistance training is mostly an anaerobic performance, glycogen will be the first storage depleted. Then other processes will compensate for the lack of glycogen, either by creating new glycogen, a bit less effective, or by directly using another fuel. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was everything I had to say for this video. Like I said in the beginning, the next videos will be dedicated to Superhuman Protocol Season 2, which is making your own workout plan. In the next video we will talk about recovery, so stay tuned. If you want to learn more stuff when it comes to muscles, you can check my last video on the muscular system, anatomy and physiology. With this video and my muscular system, anatomy and physiology video, you have all the basic knowledge you need when it comes to muscle mass, strength, and how a muscle works. Ladies and gentlemen, let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this content, and we will meet next time for the episode 2. And like always, take care.